In 1932, one man opened a two-room business school above a nondescript storefront in downtown Manchester, New Hampshire. How did it become one of the largest universities in the country? Okay, this case isn't exactly a mystery. Southern New Hampshire University offers over 200 degrees you can earn from your couch. And with low online tuition, Southern New Hampshire University makes earning your degree affordable too. Find your degree at snhu.edu/garage. That's snhu.edu/garage.
Hi, this is Steve Buscemi, the actor. Well, now I'm an actor and podcast host. From Piece of Work Entertainment and Campside Media in association with Olive Productions comes Big Time, an Apple original podcast. Each episode follows the story of one misfit with big dreams who isn't afraid to bend a few rules or take a shortcut to get there.
Well, who steals bees?
I was duped.
I shoot you in the leg.
This is Big Time. Follow and listen on Apple Podcasts.
Welcome to True Crime Garage. Wherever you are, whatever you are doing, thanks for listening. I'm your host, Nick, and with me, as always, is a man who knows that True Crime Garage is 400 horsepower of maximum performance. Here is the captain.
Maximum Performance was my middle name in high school. It's good to be seen and good to see you. Thanks for listening. Thanks for telling a friend.
Today, we are still finishing off this wonderful West Coast Pilsner called Marble Madness by the good folks at Central Standard Brewing. It's basically a Pilsner that is bigger in body and heavily hopped. This one has Citra, Mosaic, plus two more kinds of hops, resulting in a clean and crisp Pilsner with a big American hop flavor that we all love. ABV 6.8% garage grade, 3 3/4 bottle caps out of 5. And here's a cheers to our friends helping us this week. First up, a cheers to Tammy Holverson from Paducah, Kentucky.
And a big We Like Your Chip goes out to Christina in Windsor, Colorado.
Next, here's a cheers to John Larson in Victor, Idaho.
And a big tall cans in there goes to Jimmy in Louisville, Kentucky.
Here we go. We have a cheers that goes out to Karen and the Cats in Parts Unknown Retirement District. And last but certainly not least, we have a big cheers to Lexi's Pizza in Kelso, Washington. Everyone we just mentioned, they helped us fill up the old garage fridge this week. Some of them were eating pizza when they did it. And for that, we thank you.
Yeah, BWRUN Beer Run. Make sure you go to YouTube and check out True Crime Garage TV. And Colonel, that's enough of the business.
All right, everybody gather around, grab a chair, grab a beer. Let's talk some true crime.
Tragedy in Texas County, Oklahoma. We're learning new details in a case involving two missing moms from Kansas.
Veronica Butler and Jilian Kelly vanished March 30th. Their car found abandoned in the Oklahoma Panhandle.
4 people have now been arrested in the case, including the grandmother of Butler's children.
News 4's Adria Goins breaks down the new information for us. Adria.
Jolene, Tifany Adams, one of the 4 people arrested in this case, had custody of Butler's 2 children. Court documents confirm a problematic custody battle is the focus of this murder case.
You have 2 people who are dead, and 4 people that committed an absolutely brutal crime.
A crime committed over custody, according to court records. Veronica Butler was on her way to a supervised visit with her kids when she and Jilian Kelly, her court-appointed supervisor, disappeared in rural Texas County. Family finding Butler's car abandoned. after they never returned home.
When they arrived on scene, they found some things that just weren't adding up.
According to court records, deputies found blood beside the car, Butler's glasses in the middle of the road, next to a broken hammer, sparking an extensive search.
It took everybody in this case to get this done. We know that there were people throughout the 2-week process who were frustrated, who wanted answers as soon as possible. You know, we wanted those answers too.
We're probably talking somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 law enforcement officers. Truly, no exaggeration.
The investigation pointing to Adams, her boyfriend, Tad Cullum, and Cole and Cora Twombly. All 4 arrested over the weekend, charged with first-degree murder, kidnapping, and conspiracy to commit murder. Court documents show the attack was planned, stating the 4 were part of an anti-government religious group known as God's Misfits, the Twombleys telling their teenage daughter they would be gone the day the women went missing for a mission, according to the affidavit. In the weeks before, Adams purchased burner phones and stun guns, those burner phones pinging close to private property, where investigators found fresh dirt work, a hole that had been dug up, filled back in, and covered with hay, likely the spot where the 2 bodies were found.
All those court documents also showed this was not the first time Adams planned to kill Butler. Back in February, the group reportedly wanted to throw an anvil out of the back of a truck into Butler's windshield, making it look like an accident. But Butler never left her home that day. OSBI says it's still waiting on the medical examiner to determine the ID of those 2 bodies found and the exact cause of death.
An absolutely brutal crime.
First-degree murder, kidnapping, and conspiracy to commit murder. Court documents show the attack was planned, stating the 4 were part of an anti-government religious group known as God's Misfits.
Do the arrests take place before the bodies are found, or the bodies found first?
Yeah, so it's interesting. The arrest happens on April 13th, and 4 people are arrested here. So Tifany Adams is arrested. Her boyfriend, Tad Cullum, is arrested. And their 2 friends, Cole and Cora Twombly, are arrested. As a confidential witness is Cora Twombly's daughter from her previous marriage. So confidential witness, her testimony was what led to these arrests. And a day after the arrests is when, unfortunately, Veronica and Jilian's bodies were discovered.
But this is the part that is... Okay, so we have 4 people who are arrested. And really, it feels like, again, just another incredibly flawed plan to end Veronica's life and make her disappear for good. But a big part of that, whether it would have been Veronica's family to sound the alarm or not, Jilian Kelly is the supervisor of this custody visit. They go looking for those people. I mean, so it seems to me like the plan to get rid of Veronica is, and pardon me for saying so, it's as simple as it's get rid of Veronica and a +1, whoever that may be on this day, March 30th. How do we get to finding the bodies? Because as flawed as this plan seems on the surface to me, they went to great lengths to try to make it so that neither of these people would ever be found again.
Yes, they did. And Veronica and Jilian's phones eventually were found 8.5 miles away on a random property owned by this man, Jamie Beasley. And Jamie Beasley was interviewed by the OSBI, and he's like, what the hell's going on? He starts to get nervous, and this is before the arrests, but he ends up telling the OSBI, well, Tad Cullum, he rents my property. And Tad Cullum actually came to me a few days ago and said, hey, can I do some work for you here and pull up some tree stumps and do a few things on your property? And he said, yeah, okay, sure. If you want to clean up certain things, go ahead. So Tad had rented a skid steer, and the skid steer was on the property, and there was some disturbed dirt. So Jamie Beasley immediately was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be a suspect here. What the hell is happening?
This is not our first experience with the skid steer on this show, unfortunately, but there is. So we now have the boyfriend, Tifany Adams' boyfriend, who is going to be doing work on this large property, this rural property. This is going to lead to a search and a dig by law enforcement, correct? And what do they find?
Yes. So law enforcement had to dig about 10 to 12 feet underground. And what they found was a chest freezer. And inside that chest freezer were the bodies of Jilian and Veronica and lots and lots of evidence.
It's not our first time dealing with a chest freezer either.
Yeah. From my understanding, there was concrete on top of the chest freezer between the surface and this chest freezer.
There was concrete there. Again, there was it was so obvious, guys. I mean, it was almost like an X marks a spot with a disturbed dirt as well. It was just so stupid. Like so many things about what these guys allegedly did.
Yeah, and obviously because of the manner that they find these individuals, law enforcement has to think there's definitely more than one individual involved.
Definitely. 100%. And what they found in the chest freezer and buried inside that hole was jeans, sweatshirts, t-shirts, covered in blood, gloves, a baseball cap, duct tape, a sheathed black knife, also with blood on it. They saw ratchet straps, a saw handle, a black taser or a flashlight, electrical cords, and black tape. I mean, it was a mess. It was a total mess, and it was alarming. It was just a gruesome and tragic discovery.
You're finding the bodies of two murdered victims along with all of the items that were used during the commission of those crimes. What do we learn post-mortem about the murders, but two, I'm guessing they would have been concealed in this ice chest for some amount of time before the chest is placed in the ground?
The women, at what I learned, they were killed, and then they were pretty much immediately placed in the chest freezer. They were driven from the location as to where they were killed to the property, which took about 10-15 minutes. And then they were placed in the chest freezer and they were lowered into the ground. That was all done on March 30th.
And so they weren't killed where the car was found, even though we find a good deal of blood there at that scene.
They were killed there. That's where they were killed. And then they were transported to this location.
Directly from?
Correct.
What did the autopsies tell us?
Oh boy, guys.
We can keep this as brief and vague as you would like. It does go toward us learning more about the overall plan and how detailed the plan was.
Yes. Well, we can start with Jilian, who, look, both women were innocent, of course, but Jilian was truly just an innocent bystander. You know, I mean, it was so heartbreaking to see that Jilian had been stabbed 16 times. Okay? 16 times, an innocent bystander. And these stab wounds were in her head, in her neck, and she had defensive wounds. So she fought back. She was trying to cover her face. And Jilian's death was incredibly, incredibly disturbing. I go to the autopsy report, and sounds like the medical examiner believed that Jilian was paralyzed. The stab wound in her spinal cord or in her back or her neck paralyzed her. And she eventually died from either that stab wound or there were final 2 or 3 stab wounds to her neck. So that was God, so sad and just so chilling.
So initially, we're law enforcement. We show up to this scene. We know that this crime is committed by more than one individual. And then I think the autopsy and then where we find the vehicle, this all points to premeditation. So now we have to figure out who is involved.
Yes, correct. And, I can get into what I know to have transpired that day, the events of what exactly happened based on what I learned at the pretrial. But I think that we should wait because there's a lot more detail that I can fill in for you guys here. But I think that, we should get to what happened to Veronica, and then we should talk about a 5th person that was subsequently arrested.
Was there obvious signs, or was there signs that a stun gun was used at any time during this attack? And if so, we know that Tifany Adams was researching stun guns. Was there evidence that she had purchased one or that someone close to her had purchased a stun gun?
Yes, Tifany Adams did possess a stun gun, and both women had it was noted as possible stun gun marks to the back of the neck or the shoulder, which to me indicated that they were probably running. God, it's hard to even imagine. It sounds like the worst horror movie you could ever watch. I mean, especially just looking at the mugshots of these defendants, guys. It's like the devil's rejects. I'm sorry.
And so what it looks to me like is Veronica thinks she's showing up to this meetup point to pick up her children, very happy occasion. And the sad reality is she's arriving to an ambush.
Yeah.
And probably outnumbered, and the perpetrators of this ambush are prepared to move the bodies right then and there. It's very strange to me that they didn't try to manipulate the scene further by moving the vehicle. I'm very thankful that my opinion of most criminals are that the majority of them are dumb, lazy, or sloppy. And I'm thankful that seems to be the case, because I don't know. I'm wondering, we would have a lot of suspicion here, Lauren, but I feel like finding that car is really it didn't save the day. It didn't save these ladies' lives, but it really is a powerful piece of evidence to kick off an investigation.
Well, I think that, and also the cell phone ping technology.
Yes, and the burner phones. They had burner phones, which also pinged from the property of Jamie Beasley. And you're correct. They are stupid criminals, but in my opinion, they are also arrogant. They think they own this town. And also, look, I don't know everything here, but I do know that they had, quote, lookouts. And these are public roads. Like, yes, it's not super busy, but possibly one of their lookouts called them and said, hey, you gotta go. There's a car coming. So they had to run.
Were the burner phones found at the burial site?
Yes.
So it seems like these victims were found, and everything that was found with them was what these killers thought as potential evidence that would connect them to the crime as well. But
yes,
but you almost think that, like you were saying, the connection, we have a prayer group turning into a murder group, but their leader, it's almost like maybe one of the ways she convinced these people to help her was, I have connections with law enforcement. So even if they start looking at us, they'll turn the other cheek.
she's convincing these people that these poor children are being sexually abused and that the mother is willingly allowing it to happen. And this is the only way. We've attempted to do everything legally to stop this abuse against these children. Now we have to take matters into our own hands because the kids are still being transported back to Veronica's house and being with Veronica's family. And as Lauren had told us about this God's Misfits, these people with their prayer group and their little flock there, they're not above saying that we need to take things into our own hands. They don't adhere to the laws of the land in the way that most civilians do. And so it doesn't seem like where I think in most of our circles that we run in, the three of us here, not if you brought this up, we would be locked up right away. There would be people that would turn on us right away. But here, it's very bizarre, Lauren, because it feels like this is an easy recruitment to do some very horrific, very evil acts.
Nick, I think you nailed it. I think that you nailed it. I mean, Tifany was able to convince these people because she said, are you going to let these kids continue to be molested? And one of the defendants had said, well, I was abused as a child. So right away, I'm like, no, I'm not going to allow this. And I also have had, going to what you said about her connections to law enforcement and it just being a small town, I've had multiple sources share with me that at one point when Tifany wanted her son Wrangler to get sober, she ran it by one of her friends in law enforcement and said, hey, if I lock him in my basement, is that kidnapping or is that all good here? And he was like, no, go ahead and do it. It's fine. And she literally locked Wrangler in her basement, kidnapped him for over a month, a grown man.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Where this sits today, we have 5 individuals that have been charged, and all 5 of them charged with murder, kidnapping, and conspiracy. Is that correct?
So what happened after the 4 were arrested? There was rumblings that a 5th person was involved. And this person, there were rumblings of that because the confidential witness actually mentioned his name, and we saw it on the public police affidavit. So I was thinking, well, where is this guy? This guy's name is Paul Grice. Why has he not been arrested? Paul Grice. I'm like, why has he not been arrested? Well, he apparently was finally interviewed by the OSBI on April 23rd, and he went back home after his interview. He admitted to everything, and they said, okay, we need to get a warrant to arrest you. And he was arrested the next day on April 24th. And Paul Grice, we learned as of September of 2024, played a very, very large role in the murders of Jilian and Veronica.
How so?
Well, Paul Grice was the one who stabbed Veronica 30 times. And then we learned that Paul Grice also stabbed Jilian Kelly 2 to 3 times in the neck. And I haven't gone through the events of that day, according to Paul, but Paul thought to himself that Jilian was possibly paralyzed. He wasn't sure. He saw that she was blinking, but he didn't know. He kind of said, well, I've seen animals when I'm hunting, they kind of twitch after they're dead. And he wanted to be sure that she was deceased. So he stabbed her 2 to 3 times in the neck, thinking that he was doing a good thing so she would not be buried alive.
This whole crime seems like a group of individuals that thought they were doing the right thing by doing a wrong thing.
But also didn't think too much about how to look. They had to have been convinced that they were being sexually assaulted. But it feels like beyond Tifany Adams and her boyfriend, the other 3 that were involved put very little thought into, well, how can we correct this problem without resulting in killing Veronica and some other person who is completely innocent. But I guess the brainwashing technique here is convincing the three that, well, this other person can't be completely innocent because the courts are allowing this to happen as well. Not only is Veronica allowing it to happen, but the courts are insistent that they see their mother.
Yes, it's pretty mind-blowing that these people didn't say, "Hey, do you have proof? Can I see some proof that this is happening before I commit heinous acts allegedly of murder?" And just to go back to these charges, guys, I didn't explain the charges, but all 5 defendants were initially charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, 2 counts of kidnapping, and conspiracy to commit murder. And later, Cole Twombly, Tad Cullum, and Tifany Adams also faced 2 charges each for removal of a dead body and desecration of a human corpse. And then Tifany Adams was also slapped with 2 counts of child neglect. And this is due to what I believe is a surveillance video of her in a Tractor Supply Co. with her 2 grandchildren who are holding ratchet straps. And those ratchet straps we found in the burial site. And I believe those were the straps that were used to contain their mother's body. So in Oklahoma, neglect is putting a child in a, a nefarious situation or an illegal situation. So yeah.
And this conspiracy plot unravels mainly due to the witness that comes forward and shares this information, what they knew with law enforcement, but then their story is backed by the actions of the 5 that were involved in this conspiracy plot to murder, right? With the purchasing and the movements and putting them together at the time of the attack and putting them together at the time of the believed time of the burial. So a lot of information seems to be lining up with what this witness told law enforcement right out the gate.
Yes, that's correct. And also in some of the early police affidavits, when Tifany Adams was arrested, apparently she admitted to everything. And they have a recording of that, allegedly. But I want to just say something about this confidential witness. I don't want to drag a 16-year-old, but I also don't want to hail her some kind of hero for coming forward after the fact, right, when she knew what was going to happen. And look, maybe she didn't think that they would go through with it. Maybe she thought it would be a flop, kind of like the initial Vice idea. I'm not sure what was going through her head, but I've seen reports where she's hailed some kind of hero, and I don't think that should be the case.
Did you know Fast Growing Trees is the biggest online nursery in the U.S. with thousands of different plants and over 2 million happy customers? I'm one of those happy customers. Fast Growing Trees has all the plants your yard needs, from fruit trees to shrubs. Find the perfect fit for your climate and space, then order online for fast delivery. Their Alive and Thrive guarantee ensures healthy arrivals, and their plant experts are available to help with planning, selection, and care. This is why I love Fast Growing Trees. They're plant experts. I have a very shady backyard. Everything I planted didn't thrive. They were able to tell me what would work best in my space and climate. And when your yard is looking good, it makes you feel good. This spring, they have the best deals for your yard, up to half off on select plants and other deals. And listeners of our show get 15% off their first purchase when using code GARAGE at checkout. That's an additional 15% off at fastgrowingtrees.com using the code GARAGE at checkout. Fastgrowingtrees.com, code GARAGE. Now's the perfect time to plant. Use GARAGE to save today. Offer is valid for a limited time. Terms and conditions may apply. Check out fastgrowingtrees.com and use promo code GARAGE today.
Is your child struggling with a specific subject or need help with homework? IXL Learning is an online learning program for kids. It covers math, language arts, science, and social studies. If your child is struggling, this is the smartest investment you can make. A single hour of tutoring costs more than a month of IXL. One subscription gets you everything. IXL is used in 96 of the top 100 school districts in the U.S. IXL is comprehensive K through 12 curriculum, and it's trusted by educators and parents, including educators and parents that I know. I have friends that use IXL during the summer months to keep their kids on track or to get ahead. It's immersive learning. 1 in 4 students use IXL for academic help and enrichment. Empower your kid today with IXL. Make an impact on your child's learning. Get IXL now. And True Crime Garage listeners can get an exclusive 20% off IXL membership when they sign up today at IXL.com/garage. Visit IXL.com/garage to get the most effective learning program out there at the best price. You know what they say, the most important part of your spring cleaning routine is your sock drawer. Yep, you heard that right. It's time to ditch any mismatched, tired pairs. You know, the ones with the hole at the heel. Get rid of those and refresh your collection with some fresh Bombas. Bombas has the cushioned, arch-hugging socks that'll keep you comfy while you spruce up your house. And you know what goes great with new spring socks? Fresh white t-shirts, waterproof slides, and a few pairs of buttery soft underwear. Bomba makes all of that too. Bombas is a better sock, a better brand of socks that gives back and helps communities because one pair purchased means one pair donated. And they're my favorite kind of socks. Bombas is my favorite socks. They are my go-to. And Bombas is going international. Enjoy worldwide shipping to over 200 countries. Head over to bombas.com/garage and use code GARAGE for 20% off your first purchase. That's BOMBAS.com/garage. Code GARAGE for 20% off your first purchase. Bombas.com/garage and use code GARAGE. If you're a pet parent, you know about Chewy. And when they say they have everything you need to keep your pet happy and healthy, they're not messing around. Chewy has over 100,000 products from all of the brands your pet loves at prices you love. And with Chewy's auto ship feature, you'll never get that "I'm so disappointed in you" look from your pet. You can set up reoccurring shipments of all of the essentials you use so you're never running out, and can change or cancel your auto ship order at any time. It's super convenient and one less thing you have to worry about. Chewy has everything you need to keep your pet happy and healthy. And right now, you can save $20 on your first order and get free shipping by going to chewy.com/garage. That's chewy.com/garage to save $20 on your first order with free shipping. Chewy.com/garage. Minimum purchase required. New customers only. Terms and conditions apply. See site for complete details. We're thinking that some of this is going to go to trial in April of this year, or are we going to see? Are they going to share a trial, or will these be separate trials? What's currently taking place in this case? Because we have 5 people who've been arrested. It sounds like there's some suspicion that other people could have had a much lower levels of involvement. But what's the state of the case now, and where does it go from here?
Yes, well, I believe that all 5 are equally guilty. In my opinion, I do. I don't care who did what. I understand what you're saying, but there was a pre-trial hearing in December of 2024, and the state, they wanted to do this with all 5 defendants. Of course, the defendants filed different motions to have it held separately. That didn't work, right? It would be very costly. It would be very difficult. But what ended up happening before is that Cora Twombly and Paul Grice, they waived the right to a speedy trial, and they waived the right to a pretrial hearing. So that led many of us to suspect that they had flipped and they were going to be testifying for the state in order to try and get a plea deal. And that is what happened. And I traveled to Oklahoma to attend this pretrial hearing. And that is where we learned the events from that day. We learned what happened according to Cora Twombly and Paul Grice. And what was very shocking about it is on the first day of the pretrial, it was just Tifany Adams, Tad Cullum, and Cole Twombly. And all of a sudden, the first day, Tifany gets up and says, I'm waiving my right to a pretrial hearing and I'm waiving my right to a speedy trial. And I kind of looked over at Tad Cullum and he had this neck vein kind of pop out, like he was not aware or he was kind of angry. And it was pretty shocking. And then the second day of the pretrial, Cole Twombly decides to waive his right to the pretrial hearing and a speedy trial. So all you had left was Tad Cullum. And in January of 2025, Tad goes and waives his right to a speedy trial and a pretrial hearing. And they are all due back in court for a status update or a status hearing in April and then in May of 2025.
So what do you think the purpose of that is? Is that to just turn on each other and try to make one individual seem more responsible than the other individuals?
Well, Paul Grice testified so that the death penalty would be off the table for him. This case, I mean, I don't understand, or I don't see a jury listening to all of this, all of the evidence, and not finding them guilty. I don't. That's my opinion. I just don't see how they wouldn't get death for this, because death is on the table. And Cora, she did not want her minor daughter to testify, and she wanted to strike some kind of deal. And again, a judge still has to sign off on these deals, but what we have on the table so far is Paul, again, not receiving the death penalty, just life in prison without the possibility of parole. And then we have Cora, who would subsequently serve 30 years, which I think is way too little. But what we learned, guys, is pretty much worse than I could have ever imagined. I mean, we pretty much learned from Paul Grice that Tifany brought this white gooseneck trailer. They hooked it onto a truck, which this truck that they used, they actually borrowed from Cole Twombly's cousin, who's the Cimarron County Sheriff, believe it or not. It's so connected and so twisted. But they had this gooseneck trailer, and when Veronica and Jilian arrived, they were going to tell them, and they told them that the children were in the trailer with a baby calf, and that Veronica and Jilian should come and see because the kids want them to. And Paul would be waiting, crouched inside the trailer with a hammer in one hand, a stun gun in the other, and a knife in his pocket. Paul described when Veronica approached the trailer with Tifany, he jumped out and he immediately started hitting her in the head with the hammer, and she started running. And he then describes how Tad and Tifany grabbed Jilian. I mean, guys, inside that courtroom, it was one of the most disturbing, sad, and terrifying moments of my life. I mean, I don't think, and this is not about me. I'm so sorry that came out wrong. To hear him say this and to be that close to Veronica's family and Jillian's family and hear them just wailing. I mean, it was awful. And Paul is on the stand sobbing. He cannot get through what he's trying to say and convey to us. So he describes that Veronica takes off running. He is tasing her, attacking her. At one point, Veronica tases his hand, and he cannot feel his right hand. And he ends up just jumping on her and attacking her. And at some point, he just said he kind of blacks out, and he just starts stabbing her. He starts frenzy stabbing her until he sees the light drain from her eyes, and she's not moving anymore. And at the same time, he's describing that he hears Jilian screaming bloody murder from, the corner of outside the gooseneck trailer, and that all of a sudden he hears a gasp and nothing else. And so he is exhausted. He describes, he rolls off of Veronica, and he's laying there, and he kind of sits up, and he says that Tifany Adams then walks around him in a circle and laughs. She laughs. He said the most evil laugh he has ever heard in his life, almost like she was admiring her work.
Do you think these allegations were completely false and made up by Tifany, or do you think that she had any reason to believe that this was actually true?
I know they were made up. I know they were made up. I mean, I can get into some of the wrongful death suits that were just recently dropped, but I had suspected this all along. Tifany Adams on the Zimmerman Memorial Hospital board. I mean, you know how boards work. They control a lot. They control the hirings and the firings of the staff. And she had made it her job here to take the children to a therapist at this hospital when she wasn't even a guardian. And somehow this therapist allegedly helped her falsify these records and is saying, oh yeah, the kids were abused. And I don't know the details of, you know, how this therapist interacted with the children,
Right.
if she made them, I have no idea. But what I do know is the therapist, the hospital, and the 5 defendants are now being sued for wrongful death. And I didn't say this before, but Tad Cullum allegedly was the one to stab and kill Jilian Kelly, although his defense here is that nobody saw him with the knife and nobody saw him stab Jilian. However, I'm betting that the clothes and the evidence that were found in the burial site or in the chest freezer had Tad's blood on Jilian and vice versa.
I don't know what the situation is in Oklahoma. Every state is different with this. I have a suspicion there's multiple reasons why you would waive your right to a speedy trial. One of those that's always on my mind is a lot of states will give you a day and a half, even 2 days. I think up in Canada, you get 2.5 days of time served for every day that you sit in a jail cell waiting for your trial to get to the point of trial and get to a verdict. So that could be in play here. There's probably a lot of strategy going on behind the scenes with the different defendants and their attorneys that would lend itself to wanting to waive your right to a speedy trial. To me, though, it looks like there's no shortage of evidence against all 5 of these individuals. It would be very difficult for a jury of their peers to truthfully not throw the book at them and throw the book at them. They should, to the maximum penalty allowed. And you said that you believe that the death penalty could be on the table for one, if not all 5 of these individuals. But this case, I mean, there's premeditated murder, and then there's this. This goes beyond the standard of premeditated murder.
Yes, I believe the death penalty would be on the table for Tad Cullum, Tifany Adams, and Paul Grice, hands down. Paul Grice, again, most likely will not get the death penalty if the judge signs off on this deal. He did testify in the pretrial hearing, and if Tad, Tifany, if this actually goes to trial, which, guys, I don't know if it will at this point. I feel like the DA most likely wants to work out some kind of deal, because as you guys said, what jury wouldn't convict them or throw the book at them? Even a bench trial, I think, would be tough here. So I do think that everybody here wants a deal. I don't think they should get a deal. I mean, of course, unless the families agree to that. I don't know the communication, what that's been like with the families. But I think that, you know, Tad Cullum, he appeared to have a really flashy defense attorney. He was the only one that had a paid attorney. Everyone else used public defenders, which can be amazing, right? They can be incredible. But Tad seemed to be the only one to have some kind of defense that look, I mean, I don't see anyone buying this because of what we would possibly see, with blood spatter and DNA. But yeah, I don't know if I can see this going to trial. I really don't.
But so what's their plea deal? Most likely they're going to spend the rest of their life in prison.
I would think that for Tad, Tifany, and Paul, that's a given. Now, I believe that Cole and Cora should get the same. I do, but I don't think they will, because technically, Cole and Cora claim that they were just the lookouts.
But the tough thing is we have 2 murder victims. So then they become the just the lookouts for 2 murders.
Yes, and technically, Cole helped dispose of the body. Technically, Cora handed a weapon to Tifany Adams at the site. I mean, there's a lot more. Again, I haven't gone into the sordid, disgusting details of the whole thing, and I don't think we need to. I have to say, though, Cora Twombly on the stand at the pretrial hearing, she did not seem sorry, remorseful at all. She seemed truly evil, in my opinion, whereas Paul Grice, I mean, he clearly, it's too little too late. I mean, I'm just going to say it. He's a piece of shit, guys. I apologize. But he at least had what seemed to be remorse. He was sobbing. He said at one point he didn't care if he lived or died. He didn't even care about the deal. It's the whole thing. It's awful. I mean, I can't tell you guys how many sleepless nights I've had just thinking about this case and thinking about the kids. Jilian's kids, Veronica's kids. I mean, this did not have to happen. And in my opinion, so many people were complicit in just turning the other way, looking the other way, and not actually seeing or preventing what was going on with Tifany Adams.
Well, it's sad and also scary to think that their religious beliefs played a factor in these murders.
Yes, and unfortunately, we're seeing that more and more. Lori Vallow, Ruby Frankie. I'm sick of it. I'm truly sick of it. It's like, can we stop now? Like, God did not tell you to do this.
A big thank you to Lauren Conlon from Pop Crime TV over there on YouTube and her fantastic Outlier podcast. Lauren became quick and fast friends with us here in the garage very recently, and we were even talking about cases that we've covered here in the garage that she has a wealth of knowledge on, but it was so off the record, we can't even put it on our show, our subscription show, off the record. So she is a wealth of knowledge, and she was a joy to talk to. I enjoyed her passion about these cases because this case in particular is incredibly heinous. We have seen this in other situations where these custody battles get way out of hand. It takes a village, people, to raise these kids. Let's band together and do the best for these children everywhere to bring them up the proper way. And we have some trials that will be underway in this situation. These poor victims here, Veronica, so young, just a young mother trying to do right by her children, just trying to see her kids. And she's set up and killed by these monsters, these maniacs. And I can only imagine that somehow Tifany Adams was able to brainwash these other idiots into formulating this plan that thankfully it was so flawed that they left enough evidence behind, and they left a big trail behind that we were able to get some answers quickly, but it's never going to bring back these 2 innocent people, Veronica Butler and Jilian Kelly, a woman who was just there to do her job. A woman that was just out there doing her job, and her family is suffering now because of the evil of these God's misfits and their actions and what they chose to do to try to bury these 2 and hide them and conceal them forever and keep these kids. It's really, really sickening stuff. There's trials that are about to happen here in April, and it appears that a lot of these people within this group are turning on one another. I hope that it is fast, and I hope that we can lock them up and throw away the key very, very soon.
Well, like we were talking about on the show, there is a good chance that this doesn't go to trial, that everybody just makes deals. You have to love the passion in which she is covering this case. Anytime somebody says that one of these idiots, these brainwashed pieces of shit, when they call them a piece of shit, you know they're my friend because they're using my vernacular. So I guess we'll just wait to see what happens.
We will be keeping an eye and an ear on the situation, that's for sure.
So, Colonel, do we have any recommended reading for the beautiful listeners?
Well, it's a little bit of recommended viewing and listening for the listeners because we have Lauren Conlon, our fantastic guest this week. And as said, she has her great YouTube show, Pop Crime TV, and a fantastic podcast called The Outlier Podcast. You can find that anywhere you get True Crime Garage. And you can also find other great recommendations on our website, truecrimegarage.com. Just go to the recommended page.
Yeah, and if you need more True Crime Garage for your earballs, check out our bonus content on Apple Podcast subscription or on Patreon. And can't thank you enough. We would be nothing without you. Until next week.
Be good, be kind, and don't live.
At Designer Shoe Warehouse, we believe that shoes are an important part of, well, everything.
From first steps to first dates, from all-nighters to all-time personal bests.
From building pillow forts to building a life.
For all the big and small moments that make up your whole world, DSW is there. And we've got just the shoes. Find a shoe for every you from brands you love at brag-worthy prices at your DSW store or DSW.com.